Hello, seekers of meaning and makers of new thought. Welcome back to Truth from New Thought, the space where we don't just ask questions, we dare to unknow, to re-listen, and to relearn from the silence behind all sound. I'm your host, and today we're entering a realm that most people never think of when they think of knowledge, music, but not just any music. Today we explore an album that isn't just composed, it's constructed as a living memory system. An album that doesn't begin with lyrics, melody, or rhythm, but with grief and the refusal to accept that love ends when life does. This is Before the Light Could Speak, a work born from a consciousness that doesn't use sound to entertain, but to remember. To remember something we may have always known before we were taught what to forget. This episode will take you into the in-between, between thought and emotion, between knowing and not yet knowing. And in doing so, we'll reflect on how music can be a kind of language before language, not as metaphor, but as method. We'll ask, can music be a knowledge system? Can it carry intention across lifetimes? And most of all, what kind of attention does it require of us? As listeners, as feelers, as beings, in search of meaning. So wherever you are, in silence, in motion, or in mourning, I invite you to not just listen, but to listen differently. Because maybe the question isn't, what does this album say, but rather, what does it awaken in you that words never could? Let's begin. Music has the power to transcend death itself. At least that's what the groundbreaking album Before the Light Could Speak suggests. Today we're exploring how this revolutionary work challenges everything we thought we knew about the intersection of grief, art, and human consciousness.
You know what fascinates me most about this? The way they've described it as a living memory system, rather than just another collection of tracks.
Exactly. And what's really mind-blowing is how they've managed to create what they call a voice before voice. It's like they've tapped into something that exists in that space between consciousness and subconsciousness, between presence and absence.
The whole concept reminds me of those ancient Sanskrit texts that talked about sound being the primary force of creation, what they called Nada Brahma, or the world is sound.
That's such an interesting connection. And when you think about how this album was born from a love that never accepted death as an ending, it's really exploring those same fundamental questions about existence and consciousness that humans have been grappling with for millennia.
Well, what do you make of their framework of truth from new thought? How does that fit into all of this?
So here's what's fascinating about that. They're essentially proposing a completely new way of understanding knowledge itself. Instead of the traditional Western approach of linear, logical progression, they're suggesting that some truths can only be accessed through this combination of sound, silence, and intentional listening.
Almost like they're creating a new language for expressing ideas that can't be captured in words alone.
Exactly. And what's really revolutionary is how they've structured this as part of what they call the skill of creating knowledge and logic through language. It's not just abstract theory. They're providing practical tools for accessing these deeper levels of understanding.
You know, this reminds me of some recent neuroscience research about how music affects brain plasticity and memory formation.
Oh, tell me more about that. How does it connect?
Well, studies have shown that music can actually create new neural pathways and strengthen memory formation in ways that verbal communication alone can't achieve. It's like this album is deliberately tapping into those mechanisms.
That's so fascinating because it adds this whole scientific dimension to what they're doing. They're not just creating art, they're essentially developing a new methodology for accessing and transmitting knowledge.
Right. And what's really powerful is how they've removed all the usual barriers to entry. No prescribed order, no required background knowledge.
Just that one crucial element they mentioned, the right intention. You know, it makes me think about how rare it is these days to encounter art that operates on this level, that's created purely from this place of seeking truth rather than seeking success.
The commercial aspect is interesting because, in many ways, this flies in the face of everything we know about how modern media works.
Exactly. And let's talk about that track they mentioned, The Silent Beginning. Even the name is this beautiful paradox, suggesting that silence itself might be the source of all sound, all meaning.
That's such a profound way of thinking about it. It's like they're suggesting that meaning doesn't come from what we add, but from what we allow to emerge.
You know what's really striking about this whole approach? It's how it challenges our modern addiction to constant noise and stimulation. It's saying that maybe the most important messages can only be heard when we learn to listen differently.
Almost like they're teaching us a new way of listening itself.
Precisely. And maybe that's the real gift here. Not just the album itself, but this invitation to develop a different kind of attention, a different kind of presence.
Should we take a moment of silence ourselves, really embody what we're talking about?
You know what I just realized in that silence? How rarely we give ourselves permission to just be, to listen without trying to understand, to experience without trying to analyze.
That feels like the perfect way to wrap this up, with an invitation to our listeners to explore this space between sound and silence for themselves.
Yes, and to remember that sometimes the most profound understanding comes not from what we hear, but from how deeply we're willing to listen. Thank you all for joining us on this exploration of Before the Light Could Speak, an album that truly speaks before words can. Before we part tonight, I want to leave you not with a summary, but with a doorway. What you've heard today was not just a reflection on music. It was a meditation on memory, on grief, on love, and how all three sometimes speak louder when we finally stop trying to make sense of them. And so now I invite you into another kind of knowing, not one that needs explanation, not one that begs for agreement, but one that remembers. The next track we offer is not a song in the traditional sense, it is a survival. A warmth that withstood silence, a love that existed before anyone thought to name it. This is Genesis of Love, not a ballad, but a beginning. If you have ever loved without being loved back, if you have ever whispered to someone who could no longer answer, if you have ever wondered whether love survives after understanding fails, this is for you. And if something moves in you while listening, know that it's not just emotion, it's a form of truth. And when you're ready to give that truth language, I invite you to read the book Love Subject from the Truth from Newthough series. Let the music open what was closed. Let the book help you understand what stayed open all along. Now, close your eyes. Listen, not with your mind, but with the part of you that still believes in light. Here is Genesis of Love, a melody born from the silence. The Genesis of Love.
Shadows cast where dreams ignite, a gentle glow, a guiding light, a love so pure, from chaos grown, a voice that sings when all alone. The genesis of love unfolds, a timeless truth, a tale retold. Through endless pain and silent tears, a song of hope that calms our fears. Fractured hearts and broken chains, a fire burns where love remains, a touch so warm, a soul so free, a bond that tale retold. Through endless pain and silent tears, a song of hope that calms our fear. What light endures when night descends? What love remains when life pretends? Through dreams that fade and hearts that break, a love endures for its own sake. Through joy and loss it will remain, and light that shines beyond the pain. The genesis of love unfolds, a timeless truth, the tale retold. Through endless pain and silent tears, a song of hope that calms our fears, and the love echoes on.